So very warm welcome everyone to our React class. And last week we learned a little bit about what React is and why we even need it. Like we have to build a big web application or mobile application with so many repeated patterns, and you want something that helps you build those patterns, and we'll call them components. And along with that, making the app dynamic so that you can have dynamic content, which means maybe let's say if you're on your Instagram and you're seeing one reel and the next reel doesn't repeat, but it's a different reel, that's a dynamic content. So React helps in building an application like this, where you have repeated patterns with dynamic contents and with user interactions. So I'm throwing some technical terms here, but uh, we'll be going through them one by one. So let me share my screen and then show you guys what I really mean. So last week we had created this application, right? And it's up with my Zoom today. Okay, so moving on. We had created a basic React application where we had some kind of a dynamic content. Here, this counter, when I click on it, it's increasing. That means this content itself is changing. And that's what we call dynamic content. How did we create this? Well, let's go back. Let's go back to uh, command we had used, right? So what we had done was we used a command called npm create white latest. So we are using white ecosystem to create new React applications. And then we gave our application a name. This week's application that we are going to build is a sample book app, and we gave it a template. So it's important for you guys to understand the actual details of this command. You don't need to remember this command by hand, but at least you should understand what's happening. So we are using a npm create command, which is a standard command that comes with the white ecosystem. So using this ecosystem, you can create all kinds of applications from different frameworks. React is one of them. Next.js or White itself is another UI framework. So you can use this ecosystem to create different kind of web applications and from different frameworks. And we named our application as number 2, React Book application. Before I jump forward, any confusion on this? All right. So once you do this command, it React will go, the white will go through different stages, and then finally it will start our application to view. So once it starts, all we need to do is go into the this URL in our browser, and we can see the newly created application. Now going to the code of the application, and today it's going to be code as well as theory, both practical as well as theory. So you guys feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast or if you didn't get anything, because these are all the most basic stuff that you are going to learn in the React application. So you must understand, and again, I'm emphasizing you must understand, not remember it by heart, but must understand each and every of these concepts, because these are going to be central to any React applications you build. So after we use that write command, there is a folder structure that gets created for us for our React application. It has node modules. These are supporting modules. These are supporting code files that are already written by somebody, and we are reusing them for our application. And these supporting modules themselves contain stuff like actual code for the React itself and anything else we use. And then we have public folder, which houses all our public stuff, and we learn about this in more detail in future lessons. But for basic, it's like, let's say you want to use any images or any static content, which is like maybe you put a video or an image, you can put it inside the public folder. And source is where we will write our entire React code. So source is the folder which you will be interacting most of the time for for your code. And public and the source have a relation where any built files from our React code which are used to render this eventually go into public once they are built. So not to confuse too much for now. Moving on, one of the most important files that you guys will be dealing in any React application is package.json. It's a JSON file which essentially tells the build system and by definition to everybody what this application is. So here we see the name of the application is number 2 React book application. What is the version? Right now it's 0.0. Let's say in the future you release a new version. This could become 1. And then different scripts. Dev is a script that actually gets run when we see this. So if you see, this is the starting dev server. So npm run dev is the script. If you see here, to run the script, you have to always provide something like npm run and then script name. So in this case, it will be npm run dev. Here it would be npm run build. This is how you run different scripts from the script folder, a script block. And you will, as your project grows, you will have more and more different kinds of scripts. Probably you want to unit test your code, you'll have a testing script, not to jump ahead again. Then we define what are the things that our project depends upon. So React and React DOM are two libraries that our project definitely depends upon. These are the libraries which allow us to build the React code. Then dev dependencies are dependencies which are not essentially needed for actual application we are building, but these are the dependencies that are needed for development of our application. So you would see stuff like TypeScript or ESLint and etc. etc. Byte itself is a dev dependency. These are all dependencies which are not actually used for actual app that we built. So when we have our application accessible through internet, these things will not come into the picture, but these things are absolutely needed. But these things actually make you create an ecosystem which will allow you to build your entire application. So again, this is a very important file, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. So I'll monitor the chat for a few seconds if you guys want to uh, uh, admin, and I'll explain you again.
I see ESLint in there. Where'd that come from?
So Vite itself, when it creates the project, it creates a project with ESLint, so that linting is baked in. So Vite itself has created this entire thing. We haven't, but if you are creating a React project from scratch, then you would need to add ESLint yourself. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to unmute. So it makes sense, but it almost makes me wonder if the work that we did last week in the stretch goal, where we put the ESLint in, if that was like extra work, if
So,
Vite already does it.
okay. So let me answer this way. We are lucky that we are building this project from scratch. Okay. But let's say you go on onto the world and build work on a real world application, that you might run into projects which were created not using Vite. They were created from the old systems that we had in the past. Okay. And that might not contain ESLint. At that point, you might need to add ESLint by doing, if let's say you decide to use, then you have to do something like this: npm install dash dev and then ESLint. So you will need to. So that's why that stretch goal is important, because not every project that you go in real world will be starting from a fresh slate.
Okay, that makes sense. And so I remember in the stretch goal installing the ESLint plugin
Yes.
through directly through VS Code.
Yes,
But
from
here it
here.
looks like we will be putting it in the command line with the command that you just.
Just putting into the command line is not always enough, because it will fail to catch a issue uh, in your actual development time. So actually installing it from here is like an extra guardrail while you're building your code.
Okay.
You
All right.
understand
Thank
what I
you.
mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So no problem. So okay, so Edmund, you're good, right? I can explain again otherwise. I don't want to jump ahead too fast before uh, before you guys get the package.json part. So okay, I'll give 1 or 2 more seconds, then we'll move on to the
Um,
next
I
topic.
have a question. So is
Sure.
the for the dev dependencies, is that just so I know you said it was provided by the Byte or Vite, um, but is it basically so that you said that it's not necessary in order to run our program, it's just used while we're building our program, correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
what do I mean by that? That's let's look at it from practical standpoint, right? And I'm going to do this while I'm building, right? And plus new. When I do this, right? When I saved this and I went back to my web page, I see the word new added here. So this is something called hot module replacement, where my entire React code got rebuilt based on my changes. What do I mean by build? So when you go into, so let's go to maybe Airbnb, Airbnb that we were seeing, and let's look at it. So if you go to source, right, and you can do this anywhere, you will not find anything which is like app.jsx or component.jsx or anything. So when you build your React application, it gets converted to pure JavaScript bundles, which yeah, which then when user go to your website, they load those bundles and not your actual components. C.js is random files. You need a way for you to dedicatedly create this kind of bundles. You can't do it manually yourself every time you make a small change in your application. And creating those bundles is what this dev dependencies, various dev dependencies, uh, help us do it. So today we are doing this application in types JavaScript, but In future, we'll build application using TypeScript as well. And at that time, TypeScript is something that our browsers don't understand directly. They were not built to run the TypeScript code. Instead, they were built to run JavaScript code. And to convert TypeScript to JavaScript while we are building, again, you need stuff like, let's say, types.react, types.react DOM, and TypeScript itself. So what this dev dependencies allow is allow us to logically create our code and then send it to browser in a manner that it understands. Does that make sense, or do you want me to explain differently?
No, so I was just basically like wondering, so like since that's only while we're building our code, it's to make it easier on us. Like it's our choice about what we want under our dev dependencies, but it's not
Correct.
necessary for it to necessarily run after we're finished our program for somebody else.
Yes,
Okay,
that is
that's all.
great.
All
That's correct.
right.
Because, for example, white is something very new. Before we used to use create React app. This was create. Now I think they have deprecated it, but you could use AI to generate it nowadays. But this was another way we used to create new React applications. And at that time, our dev dependencies would have looked different. If we created an application like that, we would have looked it would look completely different. And I still suggest you guys to sort of use this command one day or yourself and look at compare the two package.json that get generated. So these are different ways you can. So white is the default choice nowadays, but it is not the only choice, right? So some applications that you might go in real world might have been created using create create React app. So your package.json and your dev dependencies will definitely look a lot different from what you see here. But the core concept on dev dependencies is it is something that helps you build your application, write the code about your application, and work with your application in a manner that you don't need to worry about a lot of uh, overhead, of how to generate certain things.
Could you talk about some of the other frameworks aside from Byte?
Yes, Create React app is one of the very famous.
Is there any other in particular that you use on your day-to-day like work
So
or you have used in past projects?
yes, so Create React app was the one I used to use before, but nowadays it's all about white. Even they are also React itself starting to suggest that, hey, please use white because they are very good. See, if I go here, right, Create React app, they are sort of, this came out this year early in the February, and they want to go to white as well because it's really good. And if there is no good reason to use Create React app, then
Mm-hmm.
you should be using the white.
I
But
see. It
this
sounds like
was,
it's more
yes,
stable and like it's becoming industry standard to just use Byte.
yes, you're right. You got the point. But that is not the
Okay.
only choice.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing what other choices are aside from the two that you just mentioned.
Yeah. These are the two I have primarily used, really. And just imagine this thing, right? Because we are learning React right now, we are still very early in our application journey. But if we were going to a company or working on a real world application, this is just a one-time activity that you will only do at the start of your project. And then for the next 6 months or 1 year, whatever the project length is, you will be actually not doing this anymore. Yeah, you will be installing new dependencies and new dev dependencies based on what you need, but you will never be doing create React or npx byte generate. You know, that's just a one-time activity, but still we will be doing it whenever possible, so you guys get hang of it completely. And plus, one of my aim is to have you guys as many new projects as possible. So both the last week's project and even this week's project, I'm going to put on GitHub so that you guys have a whole host of projects that you can refer back. And I'll try to make these projects little different from your assignment project so that you have like two versions of same thing. So yeah, I'm still happy to answer any questions before we move on. Assuming silence is no more questions.
Yeah, one quick
So
question.
sure.
With the dev dependencies that we're looking at right there, um, does this automatically refresh itself, like if we install a new dependency on the computer, like on
Yes.
our local machine? Okay.
So yes,
I
so
thought it did,
you would be
but just
typically doing it. It's not your computer, it's your project. So let's do npm install just a step script. So what I did was I added a new dev dependency in my
Mhm.
project. So let me go to the code and so let me find a good dev dependencies to yeah, this maybe this is the TS lit. That's oh your mistake. So let's do this. I was not so you guys get the mistake I was doing. I was not in the right folder and I was trying to install a dev dependency. So now we did, and hopefully mistake.
Yeah, I see it. It's right there.
Oh, this is going to dependency. Oh, I forgot. So I think it's not just dev, it's a save dev. So when I do npm install save dev, a coastal TypeScript gets added to here. Similarly, if I just do npm install and let's say Axios. So what I'm showing you here is it's not really automatic. You have to uh, tell the project that, hey, I want you to pull this dependency or pull this dev dependency. So how did we do it? npm install save dev to do the dev dependency addition. Just npm install and the package name. So don't worry about Axios or TypeScript. This could have been any other package, and there are tons of out there. And that's how you add new stuff, but it's not automatic.
Okay,
So
that
can
was really helpful.
anybody, yeah, no problem. So can
Does
anybody remind me how do I start my project again using Git? Yeah, go ahead, tell me. So you remember we have to do now npm run dev, if you remember from our earliest. And now I can go here and my project is again live. So yeah, any more questions or
Yeah, what's the difference between the dependencies and the dev dependencies?
So as I explained earlier, right, dependencies is something that your project needs for itself to build. So React is something that we need for our application. React DOM is something that we need for our application to show all of this. But dev dependencies are something that help us build an application that can be rendered on a browser, but they are not required for the actual stuff. So, the simplest stuff, right? On my screen, I'm seeing this. I'm uh, giving you another sort of example, but not related to React, right? So imagine this. I'm seeing a symbol here and like a arrow sign here, or this text white or React. So these things are needed for my application because I need to show these icons or this text. But what I'm seeing on my terminal itself is not needed for my application. It is something that is helping me build my application, but it is not my application. So dev dependencies are same. Dependencies are something that are needed for my application, but dev dependencies are something that helps me build my application, but they are not needed in the final run or final output of my application.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So yeah, this is a good definition, yes. So moving on, go to the code again. So our React application is built through something called components, and the components of all the components, app.app component, and this is one way to define a component. App component is the most important component in any React application. And that is the place where all other components live. So right now in our application that we see on our browser, there is just one component and we are seeing that component's code here. So let's simplify this component. Let me delete everything and just put let me remove all the unnecessary stuff. And now all we see is hello world. So I modified my component and imagine that we had list of books that we wanted to show to users. So let's say a book with ID one, name, Lord, React, and author is, let's say, XYZ, And imagine we had like 2 or 3 books like this. If you refer back to our class from before, right? This is a pattern. So we have similar looking stuff, here. Then Python. So these are similar looking stuff. That means in our case, Airbnb listing. And let's say it's. So these are 3 books I have, and I want to display on my screen. So my book is nothing but this listing, and this listing. So I have 3 books and I want to show them on my UI. React allows us to build something called reusable codes, and you will be doing this in your exercise today is this books. Let's assume that I want to show them as list of books that are there in my, imagine this is a website for a bookstore, which shows all the books that are there. And I want to show these books to the any user that comes. So this is like Amazon of books or Airbnb of books, for example. And I can do is I can create a list and I can use something called a map function in JavaScript. And if you're not familiar with map function, I'll help you understand. Books.map, and then I use the individual book. So I'm looping over this books array, and I'm saying, hey, please show me in a list, and this is going to give us a very important error, but still, let's do this. Book title and book.name, right? So we are saying for each book, so of all these three books, show me the text which is giving me the book title and book author. So let's go back to, and let's see what error we are getting.
Is that book is undefined?
No, I'm supposed to use a function, not an equal operator. So let's look at the error again. That was not the error I wanted to show you, but I still want to show you guys the debugging part. So when you build a React application, you will be dealing with errors, and when I wrote the code and I saw nothing, so like my screen is blank, or maybe I'm seeing something completely off on my screen which is not meeting my logic. First thing I do is right click anywhere and I hit inspect, assuming you are using Chrome browser. If you're using different browser, this might look a little different, but I suggest you guys to stick with Chrome for development. And then I went to console. When I go to console, I'm seeing something in red. Reference error, book is not defined. What is really happening is it is saying this book is not defined, even though it's there. So I made a grave mistake of using, I have to pass to map function another function, but I did an equal operator. So all I created was I passed a function to fix my error. Now this comes a little bit with dealing with code every day. And now if I refresh with this, I am seeing the error, which is what I want you guys to see, is in React, when you deal with a list or array, list array in React, and when you want to render or show that list on the user interface, which is our browser, we have to tell React that, hey, for each of these items, what is its unique identifier? Because I could have easily said this. I could have created another book with the same name and same author and React would still show it. Internally, it now cannot figure out if what book is what, because everything looks same for both the books. So it gets confused and it has a huge performance implication. And I suggest you guys to read more in your free time. But every time you guys deal with uh, list or arrays, you have to tell React, hey, please use this key to uh, uniquely identify each item. So now React knows based on this ID, and let's see if the error goes away first. Let's refresh our application. Now React itself is able to identify this book and this book. While the text is same, they are different by this ID. So if you see our second book with Learn Python has same author, same name, but the ID are different. So this is one way. Several times in when you go into the real world, you will see ID instead of ID available to the individual array elements. You will see something like this. You will see index of the elements. So if you are familiar with classical for loop, then you might be familiar with something like this. For let I equal to 0, I less than 5, I plus plus, I want to so I don't know the patch today. So if once you do this, right? Okay, never mind. Once you do this, I is your index here. We declare I, yeah, I think. And if I change has been already declared, that's okay. Maybe somebody else has defined I in J. When I do this code, and let me bring this code here so that you guys can see it better. Don't worry about the shadows that you guys see. So when I do a code like this, we have an index available to us. Very similarly, when you iterate over this books array, you have its index. This is a J for me here. This refers to the J or the I that you guys might be familiar. And I can use that J or I because for each of this, right, I could have done something ID is equal to 10, 20, 30, and 40. The indexes are always unique and they start with 0 or 1 or 2, and this will be 3. So these are always unique. This will never have an index of, let's say, 2. Or 2 will not be repeated anywhere. So you can use something which is absolutely unique for an array to create a key. And key tells React that, hey, each element in what you have shown me is independent and separate item. So I think I have spoken too much about the code. Any questions on this?
So basically, we have a choice of either defining the key with its unique identifier being an item of the array dot ID or dot name or whatever, right? Or we can just do index because the index will always already be unique since there won't be an additional repetitive index of 0, 1, 2, 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is very correct. And
Okay.
that has a very important aspect in real world applications is this book, right? It's right now we have put it in our code directly, but ideally in real world applications, it is going to come from database. And there, there could be the case that database people might not return you this things at all. They might not give you a unique ID. Instead, they might just send you the display part of it. And at that point, you are stuck with dealing indexes as well. So the choice of whether you will have this kind of ID or not is not necessarily you will always have. But choice of using index is what you will always have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any more questions? So that's all there is for today's class. And next week, we will be trying to convert this into a component or we'll find another use case. But this is how React helps you uh, build patterns out of repeated data. And that means what repeated means is similar looking data, be it our books here or be it the Airbnb's listings. This is a very powerful feature of React and few things that we covered today, right? What are the important files and their need in a newly created React application? What is its app component? And then a little bit about how to debug a React application. So in any of these aspects, anybody has any questions? Let me stop recording and that way, and you guys can still ask. Let's stop recording.